And to take advantage of Street Fighter V now being in a pretty dang good spot, now being in a place where you have more, I would say, agency and ability to control what goes on by your skill and your reactions and such, I wanted to get into our next segment here, which is 5 mistakes that people make and end up throwing away rounds with. And
Mm-hmm.
this is something that I am preaching to myself just as much as I am preaching to the rest of you, because I find that, especially if I'm not focused in on thinking about this actively while I play, I fall back into a couple of tendencies, some almost, I dare say, almost instinctual things that I'll do that I'm like, I'm throwing away the round here. And if I'm actively thinking about it, though, because like as I was doing the research for this, I had some of these already off the top of my head that I knew I wanted to talk about, but a few of them came just as I was playing with this in the front of my mind. And when you're playing with that intent, you can really refine your gameplay, and you'll see little moments where you're like, I would have done this, but because I'm thinking about it, I had that restraint, or I had that second thought, or whatever it is. And maybe you're not able to implement it directly because you're actively thinking and it's not as quick, but that's how you start doing it, and that's how you start developing these, and putting these things, getting rid of bad habits and replacing them with good habits. So the first mistake is that people don't use their life lead. This is a simple idea, but
Mm-hmm.
I watch your replays and you will cringe. Watch well, I'll have a few of my replays going now, and they're definitely to show some me doing these things correctly, but they'll be sandwiched in between me doing 2 other things completely incorrectly. So do as I say, not as I do. But yeah, use your life lead when you are winning. That changes the juggling match that we talk so often about in Street Fighter V. That a lot of this game is about overwhelming your opponent, and while maintaining dealing with your own juggling act at the same time. Being ready for all the things is just impossible, but you get to, when you are winning, the onus is now on your opponent to come at you, which means
Mm-hmm.
you get to put one of those juggling pins down for a minute if you want to. And that changes things a lot, because now all of a sudden you don't have to worry about going into their danger zone, overextending, jumping forward when you're not supposed to. You can just sit there and they have to come to you. They have to risk. They have to the dash forward. They have to jump forward. They have to create the opening. And not only do you not have to worry about preoccupying yourself with getting in on them or starting something on them, that lets you laser focus your sights on the places they're probably going to come at you from. And man, sure, at the pro level, they're real creative and they know what the other guy's thinking, like 6 Inception levels down and such. But I have so many times just thought that that's what's coming at me, like in a ranked match online, and nope, it's a forward jump. You know, when the timer gets low and the game's on the line, and you're like, oh, what's creative thing? No, it's a forward jump that's coming, or it's
Mm-hmm.
a the dash into grab or something like that. People are pretty obvious most of the time. You will get a lot of wins just playing the odds of someone's going to do the obvious thing and come at me. And if you can put down that juggling pin of having to worry about your offense, then you can laser focus on stopping those things and really use your advantage to its advantage. Because one of the other ways of thinking about this that I found very helpful is that when we have advantageous situations like a life lead, like you have someone in the corner, we know that that's good. We know that we are now in a place where we have the advantage. But to understand specifically why you have that is really important if you want to actually use it. And so when you have the life lead, as we just said, the reason why that's advantageous is because they have to take the risks, but only if you make them. So
Yep.
that's one thing. Don't be, be aware of who's winning. And it's not, if you're playing against a character like Rose, you probably don't want to give her a bunch of space and make her come to you, because she powers up, puts a bunch of crap on the screen, and then comes at you. So it's certainly dependent on the situation and the
You
characters you're
you
playing.
you want to stand on like a range where you kind of bait her into doing that, and if she gets a little too comfortable with putting that crap on screen, then you blow her up for it, right?
Hmm.
That's a good strategy. But again, it's going back to what you're saying. It's one thing to know to do it, and it's another thing to train your brain and to train your fingers to react on time too. So
Hmm.
don't worry if you're standing in the the right spot, I should say, and you get blown up. You didn't do the wrong thing. You just need time to learn to do the right thing, right?
Hmm.
It's especially playing defense in this game is damn scary. And exactly what John's saying, like, it's so many people get impatient, other stuff. I've got a huge life lead. What do I do here? And other stuff. Like they'll get nervous, they'll get antsy, and it just you got to maintain your composure and learn to control control the life lead. It's hard to do,
Mm-hmm.
but it's something I'm even learning with Rose, who's one of the better zoners in the game, if not the best.
Mm-hmm.
She's pretty damn good at it, and it's hard to not want to just hold forward sometimes. So.
Which I hear is really good against Rose. Just hold that forward.
Hold
Okay.
forward is really good against everyone in Street Fighter Five. So
Yeah.
especially if you play, like someone like Rashid or whatever. But
Yeah.
shouts to that. But anyway,
Okay, so tip number 2 is very related to tip number 1, but I find myself doing it so much that I made it its own tip. The mistake you make jumping forward when you have your opponent cornered. Now, again, similar, it's you're at an advantage. Everyone knows that when you're in the corner, you have an advantage and it's good. But why specifically? The reason you have that is because your opponent can't walk backwards, which means they have a huge pillar, fundamental part of their footsie/neutral game taken away from them, and they've immediately become more predictable and can't do that one other thing. It's like you're really good if you're the aggressor here, but only if you're.
and one other thing, real too, is Capcom. They designed a lot of the characters to have extremely good corner control tools in this game. So if you don't know what your character's corner control tools are, you need to take a few extra minutes and really lab and work on those, because not only is everything better as you're saying, but like your character should have very specific tools to do monster corner control. You do
Mhm.
not want to be in the corner in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. So it means that you can play footsies with an advantage, but you're not doing that if you're just trying to go in. Now, if you have your advantage and you get some Oki, of course, go in and use that. But once you're pushed out there and once your opponent's standing and they're in the corner, you cage them. You don't jump forward. And there's a part of you that really, well, I should say of me, and I think this is kind of instinctual. It's like, well, if I have it's that prey and predator instinct. They're cornered. They're a cornered animal. Go for the throat. Go for the jump in, the biggest, hardest hitting combo you can. But that's not taking advantage of it. In fact, you're either going to get anti-aired or you're going to side switch, and everything that you just worked for and all of the momentum that you had, you just threw out the window, and hey, you threw the round in the trash. So instead, you want to stay back. You want to play some footsies with them. Now in Street Fighter V, if you've pushed someone all the way to the corner, there's a good chance that they have their V trigger ready to go. So they're probably going to want to put like one of their big, either like a sweep or a heavy kick or a heavy punch buttons out there on you and activate, and then they can get out. But the answer to that is, hey, play just outside of those ranges. And again, they're gonna do the obvious thing. You can whiff punish, man. The world opens up if you slow things down and really understand why you have an advantage at a certain point and specifically take advantage of that. So don't be jumping forward in the corner, me.
Yeah, it's one of the things Drinking just told me, because I've been working on my corner control with Rose, and he's like, be a bit more patient. Like, you have every advantage, like, and the opponent's going to try to jump or do something crazy to get out of there. Sometimes just kind of holding back and just playing your fundamental game when you get someone cornered. As you say, you want to go for the jugular, but playing even more fundamental when you get someone cornered, because you have every advantage at that point. Just go ahead and kind of let it give someone enough rope to hang themselves. Basically, you don't have to make big commitments. It helps a lot.
Yeah. All right, so mistake number 3, you don't kiss, which is keep it simple, stupid. I wish I could take credit for coming up with that, but it's been around for a while. But it very much applies here. There are so many times where, especially, and we've talked about this before, but especially when you perceive the other player to be better than you don't perceive yourself as the likely winner, and then you're winning, and you start to think about things like that. And this could be you're playing a pro in tournament, or it could be that you're playing a player in a class like they're a grandmaster or something, and you never beat grandmasters. You always lose to them, and all of a sudden you're about to beat a grandmaster, and you start to overthink things, and you start and it's not that all of this would go word for word through your mind, but it seems to go instinctually through people's hearts while they play, and it manifests. And like, this might sound like, this is weird, but there's some documented evidence we'll get to of this happening on wide scale. But you might just start thinking like, what I normally do doesn't cut it here. And so maybe I need to do something glamorous. I need to do something that you might see at the top 8 of Evo, with some crazy improvisation of perfect interactions of moves and understandings of spaces, or I got to do some crazy combo. Instead of just my bread and butter will finish things out and I'll beat Justin Wong, for example, right? Because the Justin Wong factor phenomenon is this Exactly. And for those that don't know, Justin Wong, one of the most famous fighting game players in the world, probably the most famous in America and has been for some time. So what would happen a lot of times is other players with not as impressive of resumes as Justin Wong would, for one reason or another, do really well, have him on the ropes, have him dead to rights, and then just trip at the finish line. For some reason, they let him go, they don't do the right combo, they don't finish whatever it is, and then Justin takes advantage, being the pro that he is, takes advantage of the situation and just murders them for it. And but like, they are the ones that trip at the finish line, and then Justin Wong wins. And it's like, man, I definitely did this a lot against Alex Valle at Wednesday Night Fights. I'd win 3 rounds in a row, and then I'd start to go like, oh, I got to do something crazy and cute, and I'd go in, or I'd jump forward in the corner, or whatever it is, instead of just hanging back and doing the thing that was working, that got me there in the first place. It's weird. It's easy to do though. And I have a very specific example also from Wednesday Night Fights where I like to go through this because I know you don't like to talk about it, because it's your friends getting beat up, but we're going there, baby. It's was Wednesday Night Fights. I think it was 2013 or so, and Michael Tan and WoW had come over from Japan, I believe. They were kind of invaders coming in to play in SoCal Regionals, but they got there early and they attended Wednesday Night Fights. So it was a big deal, and they were the celebrities in the room, and everyone was like, oh, we're going to be able to fend off the invaders, or the Wednesday Night Fights boys going to be able to fight them off. And I ended up playing Michael Tan's Ken in the winners bracket on stream. There's a bunch of people around betting bison bucks. It was high profile. We were on the stream, Wednesday Night Fights, just before SoCal Regionals. Everybody was there, and I found that I was doing really well, and I won the first game. And he didn't have a ton of experience against Goken, so things were going well. And we were playing really slow, and he was trying to figure out how to get through the fireballs. He wins a round, I win a round. So it's the game 2. I'm up a game, final round. We get very slow play all the way down to the last 20 seconds. And then he thinks I'm going to throw a fireball at a specific spot. I don't throw it, but he bites, and he throws out Ken's Ultra 2, which is this Tatsu move that moves forward, goes through fireballs. You can duck it, and it won't hit you at all. And in fact, all I needed to do was press Fierce Punch, and I would have won the set, sent him to losers, and defended the Wednesday Night Fights territory. But
do you have to say that what if, like, how simple was that's
all I needed. Yes, because that's part of the lesson here.
I know, I hate that part of the lesson.
Was that this was high profile, and this guy was supposed to beat me, and all of that stuff made this really like grandiose in my mind and in my heart. And so what my thought process was, this guy, I need to make sure that he's down. I need to, the double, triple tap in the head for zombie movies, right? So my thought was, well, I'm going to let this Ultra run out, and then he's got a ton of recovery afterwards. I'm going to take a half step forward and do my most damaging combo, which starts with close fierce, because there's proximity normals in Street Fighter 4. So, but I stand up like what had to be 1 frame too early, and got clipped by the end of his Ultra animation, died, and then went on to lose the next match and went to losers. By the way, I then played WoW in losers and beat him later in the tournament. So that's the part of the story that you don't often hear. But,
was that streamed, John?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, it was. Okay, I don't remember that part. You know what? I only remember you failing now.
Yeah. Well, first impressions, man, they're lasting. No one remembers the last season of the game. They just remember the first one, huh? So
yeah, I have to mention, like, NuckleDu winning Capcom Cup in 2016, and then he goes online and, like, a random kid blows him the hell up, and he's like, well, I guess I suck now. You're only as good as your last game, John. Like, that doesn't matter what you've done before. But
WoW
anyway,
was after that.
So, I know, but I don't remember that. So I don't remember that one. So anyway,
I'll see if I can find some footage and a little redemption footage. But yeah, so the point is, keep it simple, stupid. Again, talking to me, that just do what needs to be done. Keep playing what got you there in the first place to this advantage is what's going to carry you through to the end. Just do the bread and butter. Just do the frame trap. Don't think too much about it, because then you start looking stupid in front of everybody. All right, so mistake number 4 is people don't use what you need and only what you need to get the KO or the stun. And by this, I mean that there are certain scenarios where all you need is one more little tappy tap and they're either dead or their stun bar is really full and you just need one more little hit and then they'll be stunned and then you get to take advantage of that. Well, why would you use, if it's all the same in terms of you only need this much damage, so a heavy punch or a light punch is going to be the same thing for you right here in terms of, what you need. The light punch is fast, man, and it's safer. You don't need to take big haymaker swings at someone who only needs to be, flicked to be knocked over and defeated. So don't be taking risks that you don't need to in those scenarios. A lot of characters will have closeout moves. Necalli's is definitely standing light kick. It's active for 2 frames, which is actually a long time for a light move like that. And he sticks it out just in front of him. It catches so many things. Now in the middle of a round, that little like 30 damage or whatever it does is not that significant. But if it's the make or break, man, you get to play a game where all you're doing is risking lights. It's like, that's a really great situation. Why would you be sticking crush counter buttons out there and such when those can be hit in their startup or whiff punish so much more easily? Just stick to what you know is quick and easy.
The tournament equivalent of that is Rashid's crouching light kick. You see people get down to stun range or chip out range, and you see Rashid's crouching light kick. I even remember a gif of it. It was like every tournament match with Rashid down to the last bit of life, and it's just like spamming crouching light kick over and over again. Well, they do it because it's exactly backing up your point. It's a very low commitment move, and if it gets a job done, you're good to go. And that's why they do it. It's highly effective in certain times and points in a match.
And this next little example kind of puts a couple of these together. I remember just after Street Fighter V had come out and Infiltration was doing what he was doing with Nash back in the day. I remember watching a stream and he would get opponents to the corner. He did this a few times. And they would be close to stun. What he would do is he would back up just a little bit, let them wake up, and he would just kind of like plink and dance on the light punch button and just stick light punches, crouching light punches out there a few times. And eventually they would just get hit by him. Like he just sat there and caged them and just light punches, and eventually one would connect, it'd get the stun, and then he'd get to go and do whatever he wanted. He stopped all of that momentum and just sat there and used the only thing that he needed to use to get what he needed, and kept it simple, caged him in the corner, and didn't overextend, used only what you need to get the stun in that situation.
Very nice.
Tip number 5, the biggest mistake I should say that people, or a big mistake that people make, is that you don't kill when you can kill. No amount of meter is worth the round, as far as I can tell, in this game. Now, it depends on the game that you're playing, but in Street Fighter V, spend that critical art to get through the round. Now, that might have been more true back when there was more Vortex, back when there was more like a single touch could end everything. So you could argue that maybe the calculus has changed a bit, but widely speaking, if you can end a round, do it. Spend the meter. Yep. Now, that doesn't mean be spending an entire critical art where a single bar of EX meter will do. You need to be aware of how much how much damage your character does and pick the appropriate amount. But don't be greedy and holding on to meter, holding on to this and that when you could kill. Spend it. Make sure they're dead. Double tap. And yeah, but just don't do the Michael Tan way, because that doesn't work out.
Yeah, that's a pretty much a universal rule that we learned early on in Street Fighter V, but it's hard. Like, the game's evolving, all this stuff is changing. Daigo's actually using V-Shift for the first time ever. It's happening. Do we conserve the meter, John? The answer is no.
Yes.
Spend it. It's you do not want to leave your opponent alive in Street Fighter V. You can risk it, and I've seen it pay off, but man, it seems like you're just playing with fire at that point, and maybe you can pull it off, but I don't recommend it. There it is.
And when it doesn't, and you hate yourself, you're like, and I could have, and I didn't, and they Street Fighter V came back on me, and save yourself that heartache. Get yourself some of those sweet league points that help define you as a human being and show your worth to the rest of the world, because we all know that's exactly what they do. Those are 5 mistakes that you could be making less of in Street Fighter V.
Boom, there it is.